My name is Monk Rowe for the Fillius Jazz Archive. I'm very pleased to be speaking with Charles McPherson after 26 some years before our first interview. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You
I
know,
sure
the
appreciate
first time around, we got to shake hands. Now we're sort of Zooming hands.
it.
But
Yep. Okay.
this is a sort of a tough question, but you've been involved in jazz for a long time. We spoke about your time with Charles Mingus and having your own bands all these years. And then you just spoke about playing a jazz festival last like 3 weeks ago in upstate New York.
hmm
Can you think about the biggest changes you've noticed in jazz and the business of jazz between that time back in the 60s and now?
Well, yeah, that's I think I'd have to I think there might be more uh genres of jazz maybe um now than before. In the 60s, you had the influence of Charlie Mingus, people like John Coltrane. The avant-garde was happening. Arnett was there. You had, Art Blakey and of course, Thelonious Monk, Max Roach. You had these great musicians that were still here, and everybody had their own style. Um, but I think now the difference is there just might be more different offshoots of jazz, or people that play, or record companies that promote, and they'll use the term jazz, you know. And there's just more variations, I would say. Maybe a little more variations. Um, in terms of the aesthetic of it, I mean the actual quality and level of musicianship and artistry. Um, the 60s and even before that had very high levels of musicianship and artistry. That didn't start with the 60s. That's always been around. And now, I'll tell you what is different. Academia is different. There are more schools, high schools, colleges that have jazz programs. That wasn't quite like that in the 60s and, of course, earlier. Um, so that's different. So therefore, it's producing um, younger players. There's a lot of young people that are enamored of jazz, some kind of jazz, and it's in the schools, and so it's more available um, in a way, at least by way of academia, and so that's a little different, and it produces a slew of young players that are being, that are getting out of schools, that are starting careers. So there might be, maybe more people playing jazz, um, and yeah. So things have changed, but that to answer your question the best way I can, I would say there's more genres now, maybe, and a lot more players.
Interesting you say that because on my way home last night, I had an NPR show on and they were playing this music and I couldn't quite place it, but then the person came on and they were doing a show about Indian music from India, and its effect on jazz and how some people embraced that. So you're correct. There's Celtic influences. In fact, bands sometimes like to promote themselves as embracing world music. So you have jazz and all these other um, influences coming in. The When you mention about the number of players coming into the music, have you had people come to you, young players, seeking advice about how to make a living in jazz?
Oh yeah, I do. I have. You know, a lot of young players will call me up and talk, which I like. I like that, and they will ask for advice, musical advice, more often than not. That kind of advice, or saxophone advice, and then now and then, you know, business advice, and I will. You know, I will tell them the little I know, and give them the best advice I can. And you know, that's a hard. I'm much better at giving musical advice or saxophone advice. Um, Business advice, I need some advice myself on that. Uh, I've I've done things my way. I've gone my way, my particular way, and so each player, these young people, it's very important to figure out what demographic they want to cater to in terms of the public, and these are the things I tell them about. You know, jazz is as we talked earlier, is a pretty under the name of so-called jazz, is a pretty big umbrella, you know, and a variety of style and musical behavior by people and groups that will say jazz. So, okay, so be it. Um, so with that in mind, I will tell, I give advice to young people, since it is that way, then figure out who do you want to reach, you know, because there's an audience for all of these different nuances in these different genres. There's a straight ahead bebop audience or neo bebop, you know, that leans towards that. I'm a member of that club. There are people that are more into uh, more popular forms that have jazz as part of their DNA. And then you know, you have rock, you have rhythm and blues, you have funk, you know, you have all of these different takes on jazz music. And you got people from all over the world that are playing, that are bringing nuances of their culture and to the music and amalgamating it with some of the part of the DNA of what I would say jazz is. Um, so you have all that. So there's a big audience, uh, and who do you want to reach? And then think about that deeply, because whatever you want to do something that makes you happy, you want to do something that you do need to take care of yourself. You need shelter. You know, you got to pay your rent. You got to live, and it takes money to live. Think about just the basic mundane problems of trying to play art in this society, and and music in particular, and jazz, you know, is really a pretty difficult sell. So you have to think about that, and then think about what kind of music are you are you able to be honest about and play, and then and think about the business aspect. I definitely tell them to learn all of the new ways that music is being used these days. So you got all the digital, uh, you know, all of that, and You got cell phone, you got streaming, there's millions of dollars being made with music. And so I will tell them to understand every aspect of the music business, not just playing in some bar, I got rhythm in some club or countdown in some joint, which is fine. I love that. But think about the ways that music generates money and find and make sure that you get paid because there's a lot of people that really make a lot of money off of music and by way of music, and music is being played by people. Make sure that you get your just due. So that means you have to have some business awareness and understanding, and you got to take part of your consciousness and your energy and really kind of look at these things. Now, I will say this: a lot of the young players of today are a lot more on that page than I was as a younger person in my early 20s. I didn't really think deeply about money, business, or anything. I just really wanted to learn how to play and really play really well, play as best as possible.
Yeah, you
And
take me back to you had told a story about hearing Charlie Parker play Tico Tico, and that it made sense to you way
oh
back
yeah,
then.
yeah,
I
yeah.
found
That's
it
what yeah,
so
yeah,
interesting that it just made sense to you. And
yeah.
you said, I knew immediately that this is what I wanted to do.
Yes, I said right.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. And I think a lot of people felt that when they first heard Charlie Parker. I'm not the only one. But when I first heard Bird, um, yeah, that was overwhelming. It made perfect sense to me, and there was something about the way because he played a lot of notes, but a lot of people played a lot of notes. But I could hear the linear logic with Charlie Parker. I could tell, and I would never use terms like that, linear logic, or I wouldn't use that term. I wouldn't even know what that was when I'm 15, 14 years old. But I could understand it. Let's put it that way. It made sense to me. And so that was what got me. It was compelling. And I got it. I couldn't say what it was. I couldn't use the right verbiage or the right semantics to describe. I knew nothing about harmony theory or any of that. I did know major scales. I could play the major scales, but I didn't know anything about psycho-fifths or any of that. Uh,
I
but
have a
I could tell that he connected these long sentences, and they were like perfectly seamlessly connected, and then the logic of it was apparent to me, and that's what got me.
I have a
uh,
quote here I want to read from the late Jimmy Heath.
mhm.
It says, I think Charles McPherson is the number one saxophonist who has incorporated the Charlie Parker language. He has the
Mm,
same quality of eruption in his lines. He has
mhm.
that Charlie Parker language, and he's still himself. He's so far inside of the part nobody else gets that you would have to say it's amazing.
Oh, well, that I didn't know he said that. That is really a nice compliment.
It is indeed.
Yeah, that is a very nice. In fact, you got, yeah, that's a nice one.
I
Yeah,
think I'll send that to you.
thank
You
you, Jimmy.
can put it
Thank
on your
you.
resume.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I mean, it's self-serving that I say that,
Yes.
but coming from a great musician like him and a wonderful, wonderful saxophonist and wonderful composer that was around during the really golden age. His age as really was privy to all of the great musicians before Charlie Parker. These people were still around and still living, and he's heard these people in person. It's not abstract for his. What was he born? 19. what, 29, 28, I don't know, somewhere probably 1926, 27, whatever it is. But that age is those people, that generation were privy to all these great saxophone players, trumpets, all, big bands, just everybody was still living pretty much. And so he's a great musician, and his playing and his writing reflects his natural talent, but it also reflects all of this great music that he absorbed.
You
So
had
that a compliment from him is very special
you were
to me.
indicating finding your audience for young musicians and reaching them. I want you to see if you can name this tune. Are you
Okay.
ready?
Yeah.
It starts with a rest. Ba-ba-da-da, ba-ba-da-da,
Okay.
ba-ba-da-da, ba-ba-da-da.
Okay. Well, I know what it is already.
Well, go
I
ahead.
think it's mine. I think it's an
It,
intro
it is
to
indeed.
a tune I wrote for my last CD and last record project. And it's entitled Dynamic Duo.
Dynamic duo.
Yeah,
And
and it features David Wong, bassist, and Jeb Patton, pianist, and both of whom work with my group.
I want to ask you about the not just the writing of it, but the arrangement. Way back in '98 when we spoke, you said the writing process is the loneliest, most miserable thing.
Oh, for me, I'm sure not everybody, but
Yes. But
yeah,
beyond the initial tune, I found that the arrangement of it was compelling because you had that very memorable little lick, and then it went into this unison piano and bass
yeah,
complex,
yeah,
followed by a bass solo. And it
yeah,
wasn't until over like 3.5 minutes that we heard anything as far as a sax or trumpet solo. And
yeah, yeah, yeah,
was this a conscious decision
yeah,
to?
yeah. It was. Yeah, because most of the time you're going to get the trumpet or the saxophone or the horns play first. So just for the sake of variation and to add a different flavor, I like to have the bass player, piano player play first, not only in clubs but on records as well. And it was written to be their feature. It was written to be their feature. And it was basically inspired by my involvement with Paul Chambers, Barry Harris, Billy Higgins, and Lonnie Hillier, trumpet player, and myself. We had a gig, and the great Barry Harris and also Paul Chambers, both Detroit people. And of course, I'm from Detroit, and Lonnie Hillier, the trumpet player, was from Detroit as well. So Billy Higgins was, I think, from California, Texas, or something like that. But that was the rhythm section of a gig many years ago in the late 60s. And so I was kind of inspired by the way Paul Chambers and Barry Harris played with each other. So fast forward to now, um, when we decided to do a live record date with Smoke Records in New York. Um, I wanted, that CD and record project is dedicated as a tribute to Barry Harris, great pianist and my mentor as a kid. And so I really wanted to. It's just my tipping of the hat to Paul Chambers and Barry Harris because during that gig, these two people and Billy Higgins, I mean these people were really playing really well really good with each other, and it was inspiring to hear that. And I just said, let me write something for this great bass player of today, which is David Wong, and great young pianist Jeb Patton, and just write a really interesting to our figure, for
Indeed.
bass
And
and
I'm
piano.
picturing you, were you sitting at the piano, laboriously writing out this type line?
Yeah,
Is that how you did it?
yeah, basically, yeah. I actually basically it's really kind of like like a solo I would do, and of course I have a way of what would you say, framing it a certain way so that there are certain nuances being adhered to that will make it not just a solo, but a tune. And there's a way that you can, I use the term box it or conceptualize certain phrasing and melodic nuance and a way that you maybe recapitulate to some degree here or there that makes it not just a rambling solo, but actually a little tune. And so I tried to do the best I could with trying to do that. But yeah,
You did good.
yeah,
I
yeah.
bet they were happy to see it. I'm just picturing. Um,
No, they weren't that happy. I don't know if they were happy to see it because they had to really they had to play. I mean, it's pretty notey. There's a lot of notes there, and and it's in unison. So and it's the rhythm is kind of tricky a little bit. It's just based on I got rhythm, uh, but the line is not real easy. And I've seen other people look at that and not want to deal with it. So yeah, but these two guys are so talented, David Wong and Jeff Patton, that I mean, for them it's a challenge, and they ate it up. They nailed it for sure.
it did. It sounds perfect.
Yeah.
I want to compliment you on the idea of the formatting of it, even up to the end where it's sort of a surprise ending.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
did it. It's like,
Yeah.
wait, is this the end?
Abrupt. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thank you.
yeah, you mentioned, of course, Barry Harris, and I just did a review on this book with Pepper Adams.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
you are quoted a number of times. I wanted to read one thing here I found fascinating.
Okay.
Um, when you got together with this group of young men around Barry, and you said, "Man, these people are really different." Harris was a taskmaster, and at one point asked McPherson to show him his high school report card. He had a C average, and Harris was unimpressed. "Oh, you're an average kind of guy," the pianist said. "It won't work because this music is complicated and you're not going to be able to play it if you're a C kind of guy. You can't
Yeah.
be in this
True.
narrow, skinny bubble here."
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. At that change, that made an impression on me. I never had thought of it like that. And when he said that, I understand. It made me understand because I'm learning how to play this music, and I'm understanding and seeing the complexity of it. I'm learning that this is some higher math here. This is not arithmetic. This is trigonometry, and so I could tell that yeah. And then when he made that statement and equated it to music and the complexity of the music, then I knew that I'm going to have to dealing with complexity, no matter where it's coming from or what the medium is going to be something to deal with. And so I immediately knew that there is a level of what would you say, deliberate and yeah, a level of really deliberate um, effort to try to do anything at a certain level, whether it's getting a better report guard or playing music or playing basketball. It didn't make any difference. There's a level of seriousness and dedication that you're going to have to actually be willing to invest. And I might as well make if you get. I mean, really, what Barry was saying, and I understand. I kind of understood it then that this kind of excellence, you have this kind of attitude about it, no matter what you're doing. And so when you're playing music, then that same level of willing to invest is still there. So it's not like you use this for everything, including music. So get accustomed to pushing yourself, no matter what it is. And then when I don't care if it's getting, your schoolwork, homework, understanding something in class, be willing to invest uh, your mind toward making that better or nailing it, completely understanding it and doing it at a high level. And just building your chops in that way will make anything you do uh, the same, because it's all the same, really.
Yeah,
And what makes it all the same is you're the one behaving at a certain point in time with whatever the situation is. And so just get yourself to having a high level of attainment, no matter what it is. So when you get ready to play, then your chops are there because you're already thinking that way. And
remind me a bit
I
of,
understood what he meant.
yeah. I was involved in an aesthetic education program for some years, and you're making me think of how we used to connect the different art forms, and that observing an abstract painting or watching a dance performance, especially a modern dance performance, and
Mhm.
being able to make some cognitive sense about it applies
Mhm.
certainly to your playing as well.
Yeah, I think it applies to everything. So what I mean by that is, and I will say, I was reading something about Beethoven, like kind of a biographical thing, and he made a statement that was curious, and he said, if you know the secret of correspondence, you can do anything. And I think I understood what that meant, and that's kind of what Barry meant. Um, and I see what it means now. And basically, when you say looking at dance, looking at art, if you're able to look at anything and see how it corresponds to any other thing, no matter what the construct is, no matter what the medium through which a particular behavior is being it doesn't make any difference. You see you see the correspondence between the two supposedly different constructs, but the behavior you can see it. So then you understand the DNA of metaphor and the DNA of analogous. What you can see the thing, and the only difference is the mediums through which particular things are being expressed, but it's still being expressed by human behavior and everything that's dealing with that. So it applies to anything. So I can look at a basketball player, say like a guy like Michael Jordan, for instance, and him going down the basketball court and the way he pivots and zigzags, I can make that be accents, rhythmic accents. Instead of a drumstick on a drum doing an accent, it's a human body doing an accent. So an accent, if you see the correspondence, and you're able to see that, then you start seeing the bigger picture of things, and the little minutia starts making sense because you see the macro and the micro starts making sense because you're already looking at the bigger picture. And the micro and the macro are the same. The only difference is the viewpoint. So, and then if you can look at the bigger picture, that gives birth to metaphor. That gives birth to the secret of correspondence. That gives birth to that. So that makes probably anything you do, whether it's playing a horn, whether it's playing golf, it doesn't make any difference with the medium. It's like the if you can understand that, then that's like an epiphany in a way. That's there's a dimension of mind and conscious cognitive awareness that happens right there, you know.
Marvelous. I wonder if you've ever had a circumstance where you were the elder musician with wisdom, and much like Barry Harris, and you tried to pass that on to younger musicians who might have been on a very narrow path.
Yeah, well, I do. I mean, because I teach. So I don't teach in a school or, but I teach privately. And I teach, kids and adults as well. And that is one of the things that I kind of learned about teaching is like the art of you got the craft of teaching, and then you have the art of teaching. And really, to me, art is the higher level of what craft is, because yeah. So you, but anyway, to make it long story short, I think this is when you start having a bunch of students. You start developing. First of all, you have to be a wordsmith of some sort, because you got people who some of these people are young and their attention span is what it is. You got to be able to nail maybe difficult abstract thought with 10 words or less, in order to get the part, to cause the epiphany, to cause the door to open, to cause the aha moments. And you don't have much time quite often. So you will develop metaphor. You start developing using analogy, and all of this that we were talking about is being able to explain abstract thought to someone who knows less and have them have the door open. And there, a lot of times you have to have the Will Rogers approach. It's this really simple language, uh, knowing how to use metaphor, 10 words or less, to cause the door to open, the aha moment for the student. And that becomes like, I think that's part of the DNA of a teacher. Yeah, because it's not like you're just dispensing data and information. You got to do it in a way that it's being absorbed. And then that's where you have to, there's a little four-dimensional chess being played there because you got to understand how the mind works, how the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, you kind of have to understand the difference between craft, between art, um, and you got to be able to nail it, and you got to use words that's understandable. And then, so therefore, this is what I mean. You have to be a little bit of a wordsmith.
Well, I watched an aha moment. One of your lessons with a saxophone player is on a video, and I just got a kick out of this because he played something, and then you said something that's so basic that most people wouldn't bother, and you told him to put both his feet on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
like,
What was he playing? Was he playing
he was
saxophone?
playing a tenor,
Okay.
and he had one of the um, iReal Pro things on the screen, I think. But
Okay.
I think he was sitting, but your point was you're not rooted to the ground here,
Yeah, right.
you
Yeah.
know, and it's a very basic thing. And I was pleased to hear you just point that out. And the look on his face was like, oh, no, okay, that was
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. So there again, there's for me, there's a reason for that, and it has nothing to do with how it looks. It's got something to do with uh, because there's a lot of unconscious, what would you say, a lot of unconscious things going on with what you do with your body language. And then you know, there's not just that, but it's also just basic physics. You know, your feet on the ground on an unconscious level, your 2 feet flat and in a certain position, is telling a part of your mind to be in a state of readiness. Okay, so that means it's a different level of alert, of being alert. Of the other thing, just the physics of it, you have you have the earth under your feet, and for your feet to be a certain way, it's security of it. There's a security there of it and a state of readiness and and all that. So you got the psychological minutia involved with that, and then you got just basic physics. You got better leverage. When you're getting, and I always use this as an example in terms of state of readiness. If you look at two great tennis players just before they start to volley, look at how their feet are, and then look at what they're doing. They're actually moving left and right with both feet because they're getting in a state of readiness for the ball to be over in this corner, the corner to the right, and anywhere on the court. So because the guy or the person is going to hit the ball anywhere. So his state of readiness is not for him to stand up with his feet any kind of way. It's ready to volley, which means the ball might do anything. Well, when you're playing and you're improvising in the stream of time, you that same state of readiness psychologically, physically, and what that does mentally in terms of subconsciously making you be in a state of readiness is what kind of state you need to be in when you're improvising. Because you're taking time, space, and rhythm, time, and space, 12 tones in the at least the Western scale, and you're behaving in an improvisational way in real time. That you got it's a state of readiness on a high level of alertness on all levels, left brain, right brain, so consciously, physically. So there you go. So it's a way so that's what I meant by that. Now I'm not going to say all of that to a student. That's too many words, but I'm just saying that behind it is not just the empty being concerned about visuals. I'm thinking about leverage. I'm thinking about state of readiness, which occurs here. I'm thinking about the whole body, mind, body. Uh, so you got to, yeah. So I'm thinking about the psychology of it on all levels, and that's because when I'm the one thing that I do for myself is when I think I will think in many dimensions as possible. I'll try to look at any particular whatever as many different ways as possible. And that's still subjective because it's still me looking. And it's my concept of dimension and all that. So it's in the world of subjectivity. But I will give it a cognitive, what would you call a conscious effort to look at it more than one angle. And this is where I will, when I do that, even if I don't cover everything, at least I'm using my will, volition, to know that maybe I should, and I will. I'll try. I'm talking about the cognitive, deliberate, analytical aspect of here. So I always make a point of really sort of segmenting the activity of who we are here, because we got all these different ways of taking information and parsing it a certain way. So I'm aware of that also. And then I'll use terms and words to, I'll use it to what I want to do and what I want to explain and how I want to explain it to them and to myself.
Is there a
Yeah.
difference in your thinking process if you're playing on a tune like So What? You've got two
Mhm.
chords that last fairly long, as
Yeah.
opposed to playing on something like Giant Steps.
Mhm.
Is there a difference that's going on up here?
Oh yeah, there's a difference. Let's see. Now this is complicated because one tune has got two chords, another tune has a million chords. Um, so here again is the psychology stuff. There's a certain when you're dealing with harmonic movement that's only two beats. So that's much there. The harmony is moving at a quick pace. It's not there for 4 bars, 8 bars, but it's moving every 2 bars. And the tempo is at a good clip. So there's a way that you have to look at all of that harmonic minutia. And there's a way that you have to look at a broader arc over that, which means you really do have to have your ears on and think melodically at the same time that you are adhering to time and space. So here again, you're really walking and chewing gum at the same time. And see, here's where all this perception and how you're looking at things come in. Now, everybody's different. And there's a lot of ways to look at music. You can look at music rhythmically only, harmonically only, or melodically only. But the real deal is amalgamating all of that into one homogeneous behavior, and then so therefore having the output be whatever it is. But see, there again lies this different ways to think, and everybody's different. Um, yeah, so this is what Barry meant by you can't be a C student with some of this stuff here. This is some stuff you got to deal with. Now, having said that, there's also this part of the equation, the subconscious mind, who we are as human beings and people. Already here is every note that we've heard every note it is. Because this big piece of meat is the greatest computer in the world. There's only 12 notes. We've heard every one of them since since we pop out of the womb. We've heard them. Okay, we've heard rhythms, we've heard chords, whether we know what to think about them, how to think of them, it's already there. So a lot of times Success is based on what part of the mind or what kind of mentation should I put in play to get the best results. And therein goes the four-dimensional chess again and how people think, and you got the variety of personality. Um, and then I can only say how I approach it. I'm sure other people approach it another way. But see, yet again, I'll look at all of that and realize, say, like a tune like Countdown, where the harmony is moving very quickly, but I will still, that's part of my way of thinking is what are some of the common notes with all that harmonic movement, because they can be moving quickly and changing quickly, but there are certain common notes that's connecting all of them, or at least some of them. So your melodic ear has to be on. And see, in your cognitive mind, your analytical mind has to understand the form and structure of what's actually going on. But how you artistically behave is a whole nother game. That's another part of the mind. The analytical part will just say, oh, it's countdown, so it's going up a minor third, and then it's going to fourth, and then another minor third. You can get into all of that technical stuff and musical harmony and theory and all that. But how do you behave with that? In time, with time and space in real time, and be creative. And that's really something. But the way I look at things, I try to look for what I call, like, as best as possible, a unified field theory. Kind of what Einstein was looking for, a unified field theory. What is the equation that really kind of nails the whole shebang? And maybe there's no such thing. Maybe there is. But I always try to look at what is the one thing that I can maybe, the form of mentation that might give me the best results.
Is
The
there
one
room,
thing of
is,
all of the many things and ways to think of things, what is the one thing that will amalgamate all these moving parts and all these brain departments and functionality? And then for me, it's rhythm, phrasing. That's for me. And my melodic ear is on. It's on. I have it on. There's certain things that I would say is static. They're always on. These ears are always open. They're never off. They shouldn't be. They should be always on. And then the rest is like phrasing it in the rhythmic aspect, rhythmic configurations. How do you phrase what you hear? And see, rhythm has almost the last thing to say about it, because you can hear anything. You might be able, people who have perfect pitch, they can identify what they're hearing. They can say, well, this is A, this is D, or this is an A minor, or this is a G7. They can tell you that without even thinking about it, because they got perfect pitch, whatever that means. They can tell you that. But how do you behave with that? How do you phrase that? That is a whole different thing right there. See, so this is like, and what is the one thing that I could bring all these different mental functionalities together so that I can behave in a way that I'm musically successful? And then for me, for me, it's almost like the phrasing and the rhythm, because I can hear what's going on. Fine. But how do I phrase it? And what is the rhythmic configuration of what I'm hearing? I can play a whole note. I can play a half note. I can play 16 notes. I can play any configuration of what. But what am I? How am I going to slice this hearing into parts? And what's the boss? What's telling me what note when? What's telling me? So I have a way of looking at music like what, where, when. So I'll use language as a metaphor. What, where, when. What is whatever the note is, whatever the chord is, whatever the sound is. Is it a diminished? Is it a half diminished? Is it a major? Is it this? Is it that? When and where is how do you sequence and you geographically distribute what into these smaller pieces. And when is the rhythmic, there's time and space aspect. When? When, what, where? Yeah, when, what, where. So it's all three in it. All three. Now, which one is more important, less important? And guess what? They're all equally important because what is meaningless. Where you put what is meaningless, and time and space, everything is time and space according to some point of reference. Everything.
If the when is working well for you, does that help to, I'm going to word the word justify pitches that maybe you didn't mean to play, but if rhythmically they fit into your phrasing, does that sort of
Well,
make
I
them
think
work?
here's what I think. I think there's something magic about concerning yourself with the phrasing and the rhythmic aspect. And what I mean by that, I think once you start thinking that way, there is something very compelling about that because you've trained your mind to actually think that way. And that has a way of setting up a part of your mind for it to actually be freed up. And I think you start playing the right notes. Yeah, because there's something compelling and hypnotic about that. For me, I can see there's a high tendency of the note being right because some kind of way because the phrase rhythmically is the right configuration for the moment. It is so much the truth that the truth of the note will be there with that. It's a package deal.
Like that. It's a package deal.
Yeah.
Are there more right notes these days in 2024 than there were back in the late 60s?
Oh, that depends because it's the same 12, at least in Western music. It's the same 12 tones. It's still the same 12 tones. But what you can do with them and how it's a lot different than it was, hundreds of years ago, of course. So nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed is people doing what they want to do. So really, when you say wrong note or right note, it's almost according according to what, according to what, you know. So so if you say a system of harmony, um, 12 tones allows for so many notes to be wrong or right, depending on how you're framing these notes. You know what I mean? Um, so there again, yeah, I mean, because if you just play chromatics, for instance, that's all 12 notes, you know. Now, and let's say we can, like, people who play Indian music, like sitar, some of those instruments, they're playing semitones. They're all between, everybody doesn't have the same system that Europe has. There are scales there are tones between the tones, and it's even American composers that have dealt with semitones and all that stuff. So it all exists, but just dealing with the 12 tones, mathematically, boy, that's so many combinations of things, and what makes it right or wrong depends on what else is going, what compared to what note a wrong note is wrong only if the rest of it has been set up a certain way. The rest of the notes set up a certain way in order to make that. And then you could say, well, it's just dissonant. There's no such thing as wrong notes. So, I mean, you can always get intellectual about it, you know. It's just like this. If you take art, for instance, and you take a person who has a canvas and takes a bucket of paint and just throws it on the canvas, and then whatever happens, happens. So, people could sit down and say, well, that doesn't look like Rembrandt, or it doesn't look like Monet, or it looks like, and then another person say, yeah, but look how this yellow drips down. It mixes with this red. And I did it with no kind of egoic intent at all. I just did it in lit gravity and do it. And who said art isn't that? And it's the what it looks like and whatever you think it is what still art. So you can get in all these banter back, these intellectual arguments. But for me, at this point, a wrong note is I don't know if it's such a thing as that, but I do know there's such a thing as right ones. If that makes sense.
Oh, I've struggled to find a better word than wrong. And
Yeah.
most people answer, well, what's your intent or what did you do to justify? And I just want to insert something about what you were talking about with the bucket of paint. That in
Mhm.
1998, you said to me, almost anything that human beings that alter God or nature can be art.
Okay.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
didn't know that. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Well, this has been fascinating, Charles. You're very a deep thinker, and you can come up with better adjectives than I can.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I feel you are, but you also, you said this about yourself. There's a great promo that's out about Reverence, your latest recording, and one of
Mhm.
the things you said about yourself,
Mhm.
I really like the language of bebop, which allows for a broad range of expression. But I'm not a civilized bebopper. I'm a
Oh, okay.
wild bebopper, and I might go anywhere from that jumping off spot.
Oh, well, yeah, yep, yep, yep. Yeah, I try, and I will if I hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What's up next for you?
Well, I'm traveling a lot. I'm gonna let me see. I got a record date that I'm gonna do with Brian Lynch coming up in November. Brian Lynch, really wonderful trumpet player, good friend, and let me see. I'll probably do Smoke again at some point, and next year. Oh, and I got a jazz cruise coming up in January. Um, and I'm working, quite a bit. I'm in Los Angeles in a couple of weeks from now, and so I've been traveling quite a bit, you know. It's been good, since COVID kind of
Come
calmed
back.
down a bit. I have been working a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time today once again, and I wish I could shake hands, but we'll just, you know,
Okay, we'll do it. All right. Thank you. Great. I had a good time.
good. And thank Lynn for me for her
Okay.
assistance here.
Okay. And send the link or whatever you can.
Definitely will. Safe
Okay.
travels to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Good seeing you. Take care. Bye bye.